Well, there's just more still in this chapter, conspicuous compassion, that I really want to kind of highlight. Maybe I'll go to the top of. This is great. Back to page 117. She's citing Spivak, S-P-I-V-A-K. I can't remember her first name. It's a woman, Charlotte. Anyway, I've never read any of her stuff. I've seen her name, but boy, I like this. 3 lines down on 117, when Spivak advises that, quote, we need to suture, sew together human rights thinking into, okay, so they're thinking about human rights, into the torn cultural fabric of responsibility. So not simply rights, but responsibility. And I think somewhere in here, Betcher either used or quoted somebody that used the word responsibility broken into 2 words, which I really like, response dash ability. So the torn cultural fabric of responsibility to and with one another. She reprises the subaltern below the surface cultural wisdom that recognizes that to be human is to be addressed by, to be called before others. So maybe we can say, yeah, in our course, God's suffering in the human condition, I sure like this for an aspect of what the human condition is. That to be human is to be addressed by, to be called before others. It just feels like something Heather might say too, huh? In Spivak's words, we are, quote, we are because the other calls us. Or variously, quote, the human being is human in answer to an outside call. I was really happy to see this in Betcher, and I felt like it was good. Bottom paragraph, because sometimes, the passion with which she's arguing for, I would say, sort of the power of the and dignity of the disabled sometimes seem to push toward a kind of independence, in a sense. And it's neat to kind of hear this other side of it that's more like an interdependence of us all. Bottom paragraph, she's quoting now Kelly Oliver. We are obligated to respond to our environment and other people in ways that open up rather than close off the possibility of response. Oliver puts this sensibility into something of a golden rule, a wisdom teaching, that we are obligated to respond to our environment and other people in ways that open up rather than close off the possibility of response. There's so much more, but I've got to go now to page 119. Holy smokes, how am I going to get through all this? Well, maybe this will be it for this chapter. She goes back to Jurgen Moltmann and his book, The Spirit of Life. And I do have to I'm going to put in a quick thing here. Some of you probably, or most of you probably haven't had much acquaintance, at least yet in your life, with Jurgen Moltmann, this German theologian that I mentioned, it died not too long ago, who, I will say this, a very adventurous Christian theologian, by the way, converted during World War II in a British prison camp. So he was drafted into the Nazi army, I think quite unwillingly, I think maybe in his late teens. Fortunately, was not killed, was imprisoned or put in a camp, and there I think maybe a chaplain gave him a Bible. I don't remember all the details, but he did become a Christian while in that British prison camp, and then became truly one of the most influential theologians of the 20th century. And I would say toward the end of his life, his theology became more and more creation-oriented. That is, expansive, cosmic, still Christian, but really getting more and more adventurous regarding sort of like how we think about, creation, God's presence in creation. So that's a little bit here in this book called The Spirit of Life was part of that move. A section entitled, top of 119 now, The Discovery of the Cosmic Breadth of the Divine Spirit, Moltmann reclaims, quote, the politics and ecology of the Spirit. By the way, Ali, just to you, this Spirit of Life might be a good book for you to look at. I don't know why I haven't mentioned that to you before. Like you don't have enough to read already. Moltmann revisits the Hebraic sense of spirit, ruach, as the power to live enjoyed by everything that is alive. It's not just the power to live. It is that. It's the power to not only live, but in the sense to grow beyond where I am right now. It's this idea of a heightened sense of life that ruach bestows. Revisiting the Hebraic what is that thing called? It's an onomatopoetic play of ruach as breath. He notes its connection to breadth. Okay, so wait, is it only an onomatopoeia in English? Breath and breadth? Or is there something in the actual Hebrew word ruach? I don't know Hebrew. And so I've never heard this, but we'll go with it. It's not just breath to breath, but apparently ruach to some Hebrew word, the space to breathe, the space of freedom, living room. This is kind of what I was saying. Spirit. Moltmann then concludes, may be experienced as this broad open space for living. It is a place of hospitality to difference, I would conclude, if one can open one's chest and breathe. Place of hospitality to difference, right? To the other, to that which is not like myself. Comparably, I got to read the next paragraph. The spirits of an indigenous culture bear some resemblance to Moltmann's deduction of spirit as animating energy of all that lives. Spirits, David Abrams writes, referring to indigenous contexts, are primarily those modes of intelligence or awareness that do not possess a human form. The affective energies of other presences that surround and influence daily life, to which every adult in the community must attune him or herself. Now, that's just a slice out of David Abrams' book, and I checked the footnote to make sure it's the, what's the book called? The Spell of the Sensuous. I mention this because this is an amazing book. David Abrams, Jewish, I would say mildly Jewish, his Jewishness does come up every now and then in his writings. This book has had a huge impact on me. The spell, like being under a spell, the spell of the sensuous. I highly recommend it to you all when you have time to read it. I think I'm going to tell you something that I first learned from him. The first time I ever heard him speak, I've got to hear him speak a couple times. 3 times to be exact, come to think of it. He's a trip every time. And the first time I ever heard him, David Abrams, I'm sure he'd been talking a little bit about ruach, this Hebrew term, that in fact, like in the Psalms especially, we do read that divine ruach gives life to all things that live, not just human beings. I could say more about that, but I won't right now. But here was the main thing. So I'm at a American Academy of Religion conference. The American Academy of Religion meets this coming weekend in Atlanta. This one was, I don't know where, some other town. not Atlanta, San Diego. It's meeting in San Diego. This one might have been in Atlanta, but it was a long time ago. David Abrams, I'd never heard of him before. He's up front. It's a religion and ecology session, and they have different people from different religious traditions talking about their religious tradition and ecological, awareness and action. So there's been a Christian person and a Muslim person, and I'm not quite sure how many, but David Abrams was there to represent the Jewish tradition. There was a woman, an Apache woman, there to talk. I don't know if she talked broadly about Native American or just Apache. I can't remember anymore, but she's important in this story. So David Abrams gets up there and just does this really magical talk. Although at first he was kind of annoying because it looked like he was always looking up, like in the upper corner of the back of the room. Maybe he was nervous, all these scholars, PhD people, whatever. But at some point during his talk, he talked a little about the Hebrew name for God. I've shared this with some of you, I think, before. And he said, the Hebrew language has no vowels, only consonants. And the vowel sounds are always supplied by the reader or readers. So, and the vowel sounds, then you could say, are also like the breathy sounds, like A, E, I, O, U, sometimes Y. And so the reader, as the reader supplies the breathy vowel sounds into this collection of consonants, they're, in a sense, breathing ruach into these consonants to make this a word, something more than just a collection of letters. He said something like that. That's cool enough. Then he said, but notice that the holy name of God in Hebrew is composed of consonants that are by far the breathiest of the consonants. Now, I don't know Hebrew, never taken a day of it, so I don't know the names of these consonants, but in English, they'd be Y, H, and W, right? Y, H, W, H. So, Y, H, W, H then gets breathed in with consonant or with vowels to be, most currently today, Yahweh, right? And he said, notice that these consonants are themselves pretty breathy. They're not shaped by your teeth or by lips smacking or, your tongue clicking or anything. It's just, yeah. And he said, and then he goes, there is a Jewish tradition that teaches or speculates that the holy name is created by breathing. Yahweh. And he did that in this room, and I'm telling you, there was a collective, the collective room of people going, oh, wow. Yahweh. Now, he didn't say that he could prove that was the case. He said it was a Jewish tradition. I've loved it ever since. That like this name, which can be translated, I am who I am, so it has to do with existence. But really, Yahweh in the Hebrew is less I am what I am and more I shall be what I shall be. It's more future-oriented, so more dynamic, we might say. But Yahweh, oh my goodness, that blew me away. This Yahweh, and so that was David Abrams, the same guy that wrote this book, The Spell of the Sensuous, which is a powerful book on human language and the way that we live in the world differently than people who lived in pre-linguistic ways. It's a great book, influenced a lot by phenomenology. I think I might have talked about, wasn't it this book? Merleau-Ponty. I think Merleau-Ponty makes significant appearances in Abrams' book. I highly recommend it. One of the mind-blowing books of my life. And so I wanted to mention that I was happy that he got an appearance in her book. I'm going to pause here.